A young black girl offers to help a stranded millionaire fix his Mustang. But the moment he notices the ring on her finger, everything he thought he knew begins to unravel, and his life never remains the same. The late afternoon heat clung to the road like smoke, making the pavement shimmer as 11-year-old Zara Brooks trudged home from school. Her steps slowed when she spotted a sleek, fire-red Shelby GT 500 Mustang pulled to the side. Its hood popped open like it was gasping for air. Next to it, a sharply dressed white man paced in frustration, barking into his phone. His suit looked like it belonged in a boardroom, not on a dusty roadside in rural Massachusetts. "I don't care what it costs," he snapped. "I've been stranded here for hours. I have to meet with the governor in under 3. He glanced at a watch that probably cost more than Zara's whole street. Zara paused. Aunt Carla's voice echoed in her mind. Don't talk to strangers, especially those who clearly didn't belong in their quiet, mostly black community 2 hours outside Philadelphia. But the man didn't seem dangerous, just panicked. She tightened her grip on her faded backpack, which carried not just homework, but a well-loved toolkit from her Uncle Theo, a local mechanic who believed every kid should learn how an engine breathes. She stepped closer, cautious but curious. Excuse me, sir," Zara said, her voice steady but polite. "Need a hand with your car?" The man turned around, clearly startled. Richard Langston, real estate tycoon and head of Langston Holdings, blinked at the small girl standing in the heat, her braids frizzing under the sun, eyes steady, confidence unshaken. He had no idea that her question was about to change everything. The annoyance on his face barely had time to settle before it twisted into patronizing disbelief. Standing before him was a little girl with bright, beaded braids, scuffed sneakers, and a baggy MIT t-shirt that swallowed her small frame. He chuckled under his breath. "That's sweet, kiddo. But this car's a beast. I need a real mechanic." Zara didn't flinch. She took a step closer, glancing under the raised hood like she'd done it 100 times before. "My uncle's a mechanic. Runs his own shop. I've been helping him since I was big enough to hold a wrench. I can take a look." Before Richard could wave her off, she had already dropped her backpack and leaned into the engine with calm, practiced hands. "When did it start acting up?" she asked, voice steady, all business. He exhaled sharply. "About 40 minutes ago. Engine overheated, then just cut out." "Did it smell kinda sweet? Like syrup?" Richard blinked. "Yeah, actually it did." "How'd you?" "Coolant issue," she said, pointing at a thin stream beneath the car. "You've got a leak. That's why it overheated." As she spoke, Richard found himself staring. There was something oddly familiar. The way she narrowed her eyes when she focused. The way she moved with quiet certainty. Not rushed, not unsure. Just precise. "What's your name?" he asked.
Zara.
"Zara Brooks." She held out her small hand, now smudged with grease. He shook it, still trying to process the moment. "Richard Langston," he replied. "Pleasure, Mr. Langston. I think I can get you going for now." She unzipped her bag and pulled out a small metal case. "Uncle Theo always says, never leave home without your tools. You never know who's gonna need a hand. Kindly do us a quick favor. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you are touched by this story. Your support keeps us creating and sharing more powerful stories as this one. Thank you." Now let's get back to our story. Richard stood there, transfixed, as the young girl moved around the engine with the calm precision of someone far beyond her years. Her hands worked quickly, too quickly for someone who'd barely come up to his waist. She found the cracked radiator hose and wrapped it tightly with a strip of heat-resistant tape pulled from a weathered tin kit. "That'll hold long enough to get you to the next town," she said, wiping her fingers on the hem of her shirt. "But you're gonna need to add water to make up for what the system lost." Richard opened his mouth, maybe to thank her, maybe to question her again, but the words never made it out. She pushed a few stray braids away from her face, and that's when he saw it. The sunlight caught it just right, an old, emerald green ring glinting on her finger. Gold band, thin as a memory, with a crescent-shaped flaw inside the stone. And just like that, the years collapsed around him. It was his ring. The one he gave to a girl named Zara over a decade ago at Starlight Haven Orphanage, right before the place was shuttered without explanation. That ring. Richard's voice cracked, barely audible. It's very unique. The girl, Zara, glanced down. It was my mom's, she said quietly. Well, my adoptive mom, Celeste. She passed last year. A flicker of sadness swept across her face, dimming her usual brightness. She told me it meant something, that it came from someone who made a promise, but she never said more than that. Richard's chest felt tight. He tried to hold himself steady, offering a faint nod. Would it be all right if I drove you home? Just to say thanks. Zara studied him for a second, his eyes, his posture, his sudden softness, then gave a small, cautious smile. Okay, she said. Sure. The ride home was quiet at first, just the steady hum of tires on country pavement and the occasional chirp of cicadas. But Richard, gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly, broke the silence with questions that felt offhand, though they weren't. So, where do you go to school? He asked, voice light. Zara answered politely. Jefferson Elementary. I'm in 5th grade. He nodded, watching her from the corner of his eye. You've lived around here long? Since I was 3, she said, her tone thoughtful. After my mom, well, my adoptive mom, Celeste, she brought me here. After she passed, my Aunt Carla and Uncle Theo took me in. Richard's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. And before Celeste, do you remember where you were? She hesitated. Not really. Just that it was a place called Little Angels. Some orphanage. It shut down not long after she adopted me. The name hit him like a brick. His breath caught. Little Angels? He asked, barely above a whisper. You're sure?
Yeah. Why? Did you know it?
Richard nodded slowly, his eyes fixed ahead.
I did.
A long time ago. They pulled up in front of a modest white house with flowers blooming wildly along the porch railing. Zara unbuckled her seatbelt. Thanks for the ride, Mr. Langston. Just as she reached for the door handle, Richard quickly pulled a sleek business card from his wallet and offered it to her. Zara, if you ever need anything, ever, you call me. Promise. Her eyes narrowed slightly with curiosity, but she accepted it with a polite nod. Okay. She hopped out and jogged toward the porch, the gold ring on her finger catching one last glint of sunlight as she waved. Richard sat frozen in the driver's seat, staring after her, his chest tight, his hands shaking. Then, with one deep breath, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. His private investigator picked up on the second ring. What Zara didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that this small act of kindness on a roadside had just unlocked something far bigger. A door to buried truths, a trail of secrets, and a past that was never meant to stay hidden. Richard hadn't slept in days. His eyes, red-rimmed and restless, scanned the enlarged photo of a familiar emerald ring, one his private investigator had pulled from a zoomed-in image of a little girl's hand. That ring, the same one he'd given a tiny, bright-eyed orphan over a decade ago, a promise forged in good intentions and then abandoned. A promise to come back, one he never kept. Now, in the glass-walled corner office of Langston Enterprises, he sat hunched over a desk littered with old files and scattered guilt. 12 years ago, his father, Howard Langston, had quietly purchased the Starlight Haven Orphanage for next to nothing. The excuse was financial mismanagement. The truth? Harder to find. Soon after, Richard had taken over as CEO, never questioning the acquisition until now. His assistant's voice broke through the haze. Mr. Evans from Legal is here, with the Horizon Project files. Richard quickly shoved the orphanage documents out of sight before the door opened. Evans stepped in with the briefcase. "These are the acquisition records from Little Angels," he said, setting them down. "Though I'm not sure why we're dusting off decade-old paperwork. Your father was very firm about keeping them sealed." "My father is retired and drinking mojitos in Boca Raton," Richard said flatly. "I'm the one asking now." As Richard flipped through the records, something caught his breath in his throat. Bank statements that didn't add up, followed by a list. A list of children. Some marked reassigned. One name circled in red, Zara Brooks. A scribbled note beside it read, "Special case. Contact HW." Just then, Ramirez, his investigator, called. "I tracked down Celeste Brooks' adoptive mother. She died in a car wreck last year. Faulty brakes. Police said it looked suspicious." "And the adoption records?"
Gone.
Officially, Zara Brooks never appeared on the Little Angels roster. Richard's voice hardened. "Dig into her current guardians. I want everything." And while he searched for buried truths in a high-rise office, Zara, completely unaware, worked quietly behind her uncle's house, hands deep in engine parts and dreams far bigger than she knew. The garage was her safe haven. Wrenches hung in perfect rows, the air rich with the scent of oil and old engines. "You get that radio working yet?" Leon asked as he stepped inside, wiping his hands on a rag. Zara grinned, lifting the retro radio proudly.
Yep.
"Just needed a few wires reconnected." Leon tousled her braids, pride in his eyes. "You're something else, kid. I swear, you've got machines in your blood." Zara's fingers spun the ring around her knuckle. "Uncle, do you think Mom would be proud of me?" Leon's voice softened. Celeste was already proud. She used to say your mind ran like an engine, strong and always moving. Zara hesitated. "I met this man the other day."
Rich.
"His car broke down. I fixed it. He recognized this ring." Leon stopped cold. "Who was he?" "Richard Langston," she said, pulling out the business card. He looked shaken when he saw it. Leon's face went pale. Renee appeared in the doorway, her voice tight. "Zara, remember we told you one day we'd explain more about Celeste?" She paused. That day is now. That night, the truth unfolded like a buried photograph. Celeste hadn't just adopted her. She had rescued her. She was a nurse at the orphanage when everything suddenly shut down. They had fled, changed names, and lived in quiet fear ever since. Renee handed Zara a worn envelope. "Your mother left this behind. She made us promise to give it to you if a Langston ever came looking." With shaking fingers, Zara opened it and began to read. "My dearest Zara, if this letter has reached you, it means the past is finally catching up." Meanwhile, at his apartment, Richard's phone lit up. Ramirez again. "Sir," he said, "we're not the only ones digging into Little Angels." A journalist named Marcus Hayes. He's been digging for years, and what he's uncovered might explain why a certain powerful man took such a strange interest in a handful of children from a long-forgotten orphanage, especially the ones who weren't just smart, but different. Gifted. The very next morning, a sleek black SUV crept up outside Mia's school. Two men in suits sat inside, eyes fixed on the exit. "That's her, right? The one with the emerald ring."
Yeah.
"Mr. Langston Sr. wants her brought in immediately." What they didn't see was the old pickup truck parked across the street. Inside, Leon was watching and dialing. He called the number Celeste had once given him for emergencies only. "Marcus Hayes," he said into the phone, his voice low. "It's about Little Angels. And the girl with the ring. I've got what you need." Back at Langston Enterprises, Richard faced his father across a mahogany desk. Howard Langston, sharp-eyed and colder than ice, had flown in from Florida without so much as a call. "You're digging into the orphanage records?" he barked. "That's old business. Dead and buried." "I found her, Dad," Richard said. "Her name is Zara Brooks. She has the ring." Howard scoffed. "So what? Just another lost kid. What matters is Project Horizon. There are billions riding on this. You have no idea what kind of child she really is." Richard looked confused. "What do you mean?" "She's not just smart," Howard said with a crooked smile. "She has a gift. Some kids are born with talents the world can use. Weaponize. Control. Why do you think we bought that orphanage?" Richard fell quiet. Meanwhile, Zara sat at home, hands trembling as she opened a letter Celeste had left sealed for years. The truth was spilling out about her past, her gift, and the real purpose of the emerald ring. It wasn't just sentimental.
It was a key.
A cipher. Inside, it unlocked secrets, records that could shatter an empire. Lines were being drawn. On one side, a corporate giant desperate to protect decades of buried secrets. On the other, a young girl who could see how things worked and fix what others had broken. And caught in the middle, Richard Langston, a man faced with the hardest question of his life. What kind of legacy do you protect when the truth starts knocking? And outside the towering glass windows of Langston Enterprises, the storm was already coming. Howard Langston had summoned the boardroom like a man calling war. His composure, usually unshakable, had cracked, rage bleeding through every sharp line of his face. "Where's my son?" he barked, slamming his fist against the sleek glass table. "He was due an hour ago." As if on cue, the heavy doors creaked open. Richard stepped in, unnervingly calm, beside a woman in a tailored navy suit that no one in the room recognized. "Apologies for the delay, Dad," Richard said evenly. "This is Claire Bennett. She's with the Department of Justice. She's got a few questions about Project Prometheus." Howard's jaw locked, the color draining from his face. That name wasn't supposed to leave locked files, let alone be spoken in front of a federal prosecutor. His voice came out in a venomous whisper. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Richard didn't flinch. He walked to the touchscreen on the wall, popped open his laptop, and connected it with a single click. What I should have done years ago. The lights dimmed. Documents flashed across the screen. Names, faces, case files. Children. 48 of them. Scanned, ranked, studied. Secret records from Little Angels and 5 other shuttered homes Langston Enterprises had sponsored over the years. Howard leaned forward, trying to steady himself. "You stole private company documents." Richard cut him off with a look. The kind that said, "You don't own this anymore." "That's not just shady," Richard said quietly. "That's criminal. Corporate sabotage. And it gets worse." He clicked the next folder. There's proof of illegal testing on children. Tampered adoption files. Bribed officials. Silenced employees. A video flickered to life on the large screen. A grainy security tape, time-stamped from 12 years ago. A woman, young and frightened, Celeste Brooks, rushed through a dark corridor with a child clutched to her chest. Then another clip, Howard speaking to security guards. "Find her. That girl is too valuable. She's government level. She doesn't leave this building." Richard's voice hardened. 3 staff members from Little Angels died in accidents right after. One of them was Celeste's brother. He started poking around where he shouldn't. "You don't understand what's at stake here," Howard began to protest, but he didn't finish. The boardroom doors opened again. Zara stepped inside.
Calm. Steady.
Not alone. Behind her stood Uncle Theo and a man with a camera slung over his shoulder, Marcus Hayes, investigative reporter with the Philadelphia Globe. Richard stood, stunned. "Zara, you didn't need to be here." She met his eyes. "Yes, I did." Her voice was low but resolute. "Celeste told me this day would come. That I'd have to look the men in the eye who made us run." Howard turned to her. His face shifted, surprise melting into smugness. "So you're 17, he said. "Didn't expect you to be so small." Zara didn't flinch. "And you're the man who murdered my mother." Her brakes didn't fail. "You made sure of it." Howard gave a slow, dismissive smile. Even if you believe that, proving it? Impossible. You forget who you're dealing with. I make problems disappear. But Zara didn't argue. She simply opened her backpack, reached in, pulled out the ring. She turned the emerald. A soft click. A hidden chamber slid open beneath the stone. Inside, a tiny black chip. And everything was about to change. Celeste was far more clever than you realized, Zara said quietly. The ring wasn't just sentimental, it's a storage drive. She hid everything inside it. Files, backups, even footage of your private meetings with military researchers. The ones about turning orphan children into government assets using their cognitive gifts. For once in his life, Howard Langston had no words. Marcus Hayes stepped forward, holding up a phone. This is all being streamed live. Straight to our station. Straight to social media. Over 10,000 people are watching and counting. Richard moved closer to his father, voice low and final. It's done. I've accepted the prosecutor's deal. Immunity for full cooperation.
But you?
That's up to a jury now. Just then, federal agents walked in and placed Howard under arrest. Zara stood firm, facing the man who had left so much wreckage behind. My mother used to say machines can be repaired, she told him calmly. But broken people? They have to choose to fix themselves. Maybe you'll find that in prison. As he was led away, cameras caught the moment his empire collapsed in real time. Within days, Langston Enterprises tanked. Reports exposed years of corruption, medical abuse, and hidden agendas. Richard watched it unfold with heavy eyes. He'd lost the fortune, lost his name, but maybe, just maybe, he'd regained something deeper. His conscience. Outside the courthouse, as reporters swarmed and headlines raced ahead of them, Zara found Richard on the steps. She touched the ring. No longer a secret, but a symbol of truth. So, she asked, what now? Richard looked at the skyline, at all the towers built on buried lies. We start again, he said. This time, we build something worth standing on. No one would have guessed that a single encounter on a back road would ripple out into something much bigger, something that would reshape a family, a legacy, and an entire community. What once stood as a monument to greed and silence had fallen. And in its place, something bold and beautiful was beginning to rise. 5 years later, Zara Brooks, now 15, strode confidently through the corridors of the Brooks Innovation Center. Built on the very ground where Starlight Haven Orphanage once stood, the center buzzed with young minds and big ideas. Labs, workshops, and classrooms stretched out across the campus like veins of hope, alive with invention and promise. The East Wing sensors are still misfiring, Zara noted, her voice steady, her eyes scanning the readout like a seasoned engineer. She spoke with clarity that made grown men twice her age lean in. The same girl who once patched up a Mustang by the roadside was now solving systems failures before most teens learned to drive. Out near the garden courtyard, Richard Langston mingled with investors, not in tailored suits, but in denim and rolled sleeves. The man once destined to inherit a crumbling empire had chosen to burn the blueprint. His entire fortune now powered the Prometheus Initiative, a global program focused on uplifting gifted kids from overlooked corners of the world. We've identified 23 this quarter, Richard shared with a quiet pride. Every one of them receives full support, scholarships, mentoring, whatever they need. No fine print, no exploitation, just real opportunity. For those who knew him before, the transformation was almost hard to believe. But it was real. The man who once signed off on silence now stood for transparency. Zara's filing her 3rd patent next month, added Leon, now director of the engineering division. Harvard, MIT, Stanford, they're all circling. Along the main corridor of the center, a glass-encased exhibit told the whole story. Faded photos of the orphanage, newspaper clippings detailing the Langston downfall, and one headline, front and center, That marked the beginning of it all. Teen girl brings down billion-dollar empire. Elsewhere, behind the heavy doors of a federal prison, Howard Langston sat in silence, his eyes fixed on nothing. Once a towering figure in the world of finance, the man who bent systems to his will now shuffled through his days in a concrete cell, forgotten by the empire he helped build. His wealth was gone. His name? A punchline in the news cycle. He won't attend group therapy, a guard remarked, shaking his head. Still thinks he's going to walk out of here and start over. That confidence, once his weapon, had curdled into delusion. All that remained was a shell of arrogance, worn thin by time and consequence. That same night, across town, hope took center stage. The Brooks Center held its very first graduation ceremony. A dozen young adults from underrepresented neighborhoods stood tall, clutching certificates and future plans, college letters, job offers, new beginnings. Zara wasn't graduating. She was still too young. But when she stepped up to the mic, the room hushed. Her voice was calm, clear, older than her years. "When I was 10, she began, gently twisting the emerald ring on her finger, "I helped fix a man's car on the side of a dusty road." What began as a simple act of kindness had set off a chain reaction. One that tore down walls, exposed ugly truths, and made space for something better to rise. In the back row, Richard blinked back tears. The child who unknowingly upended his world had, in truth, given him something he never found in all his years of wealth: purpose. My mom, Celeste, used to tell me, broken machines can be repaired, but broken systems? Those have to be rebuilt from scratch. Zara's words echoed across the room, not just a speech, but a blueprint. The next morning, an envelope arrived. It was from Victoria Langston, Howard's estranged daughter. Now a federal prosecutor, she dropped the family name after the scandal. Zara opened the letter, reading aloud at the breakfast table, surrounded by Richard, Uncle Theo, and Aunt Carla. "We've uncovered 5 more orphanages operating like little angels. Because of you and the evidence you brought forward, 37 children have now been found and protected. Some are a lot like you. When you're ready, they'd love to meet you." As the final words settled into the quiet, Zara looked around the table. This time, her ring didn't feel like a mystery. It felt like a key. What started as a random roadside encounter had quietly turned into something far more powerful, a reckoning that rippled through lives, institutions, and beliefs. It didn't just shift destinies. It shattered an entire system built on silence and exploitation. "You know the funny part?" Richard said, his voice laced with something between regret and awe. "Howard always talked about legacy. Turns out, he left one. Just not the kind he'd want his name on." Zara didn't turn. Her eyes were locked on the children laughing in the courtyard, barefoot and free, untouched by the kind of shadows that nearly swallowed her own story. "Real legacy isn't about towers or trusts," she said quietly. "It's about giving people back the freedom they were never supposed to lose." That evening, as the golden sun dipped low over the roof of the newly renamed Brooks Center, a fresh sign was lifted into place. Bold letters etched in wood, not marble, read, "Every child deserves freedom. Every gift deserves to grow." It wasn't just a new beginning. It was a vow, forged from everything they endured, to never let the past repeat itself. If this story stirred something inside you, if it reminded you that even quiet voices can shatter the loudest lies, then like this video, share it, and subscribe. Because true change doesn't start with power. It starts with people who refuse to stay silent.